easiest way to do this is going to be to go through the charges at this time and talk through the logic on them. Mr. Wallace, I'll start with you since you're here. And we're going to start with the more simple charges, and then we'll kind of come back around and talk about drug trafficking and all that at the end. With regards to the count of unauthorized operation of an off-road vehicle, I will be finding you guilty, as you have been, you were seen driving an off-road vehicle. The plate was red on that vehicle. You were pursued on that vehicle. You got away. With regards to 2 counts of resisting arrest, Mr. Wallace, I'm actually going to be finding you not guilty.
Woohoo!
No indication was made to this court that you were ever placed under arrest. There was an incident with the traffic stop where you were being told to comply, and you got on your vehicle and you fled. And there was also the incident at the apartment where you were allegedly told to, demask yourself. You were mask mandated. It's specifically written into the report. But you were not placed under arrest at the time. That was a detainment that you resisted and you ran away from and recklessly evaded on both occasions. That said, you disobeyed that lawful order to remove your mask, so I'll find you guilty of that, and I'll find you guilty 2 times of reckless evading. Pertaining to the charge of sale of drugs, Mr. Wallace, I will not be finding you guilty specifically.
Yes.
With regards to that, Mr. Wallace, you were not on the ground engaging in these handoffs between the individuals. There was no indication that there was a sale of drugs between you and the individuals that were walking up for these handoffs. But we're going to come around to the other charges in a moment.
16 charges.
The other charges are a little bit more straightforward. Criminal possession of firearm class 1, guilty. Weapon attachments, guilty. Dirty money, contraband, drug paraphernalia, thermite, government-issued equipment, and the taser. You are guilty of all of those charges, as they were all documented as evidence that was found during the raids of your properties, which the raid was found to be signed and lawful.
Bullshit.
Yeah.
I want to move on to the charges for Mr. Harper at this time, and then address the drug trafficking and felony possession at the end.
Getting stacked here.
Mr. Harper, while he
Okay,
is not
Mario.
here, is going to be found guilty of the following charges. Resisting arrest for running away from officers and attempting to get on the Manchez, or the motorcycle that was flagged stolen on the scene of the gas station. I'll be finding him guilty. Joyriding, I'll be finding him guilty. The vehicle had to be taken and placed there, and he attempted to get on it, which shows constructive possession and intent. He's guilty of joyriding. I will be finding Mr. Harper not guilty of assault and battery. Bloom, I understand in your statement that you wrote that he tackled you. I believe that action to be more part and parcel with the act of resisting arrest at the time. I don't know that it necessarily rises to
My
assault and battery
knees!
for me in this instance. I'm sorry that your poor knees. 2 times criminal possession of firearm class 1, I'll be finding him guilty. Sale of drugs, I will be finding Mr. Harper guilty because he is engaging in the handoffs and the transactions with the woman who was so acutely pictured there on the board, as well as several others that were testified to be witness to. And then with regards to misdemeanor possession and controlled dangerous substance, he had 14 grams of methamphetamine. He will be found guilty. And during a raid of his properties, he was found to have 10 separate extended magazines for weapons. He'll be found guilty of the 10 times possession of weapon attachment. So then brings us back to the larger charges. Drug trafficking and felony possession with intent to distribute. Mr. Wallace, for you, this is much easier. Based on the raid that took place,
Guilty.
I can confirm through evidentiary value that the following items were found. There were all of the components to manufacture and create methamphetamine. There was methamphetamine that had been recently manufactured, it appeared. And there had been methamphetamine that was in smaller quantities. A large amount of both. 200 grams roughly of these smaller batches and quite a lot of the larger.
Excuse me.
To me, this not only indicates felony possession with intent, with the large amount that you had on your person, or at least in your properties, I should state, and the other aggregating factors. The dirty money,
What?
the guns, the weapon attachments. Does this courts believe that it's beyond a reasonable doubt that you, no doubt, had felony possession with intent to distribute that methamphetamine that was in your property?
Right.
You will be found guilty of that charge. Further,
Right.
it's clear to me that you engaged in the manufacturing of those drugs through the aggravating circumstances found.
Right.
And further, this court does find it beyond a reasonable doubt that on 2 separate occasions, Mr. Wallace, you brought methamphetamine to Jay Harper that he then proceeded to sell to individuals in the streets.
Okay.
You are guilty
Okay.
of drug trafficking, sir.
Oh,
Oh no.
Okay.
the main one.
Now, it gets a little bit more complicated for Mr. Harper. I'm going to be finding him guilty of accomplice of felony possession with intent to distribute, because I do believe you were handing him drugs and he was intending to distribute them and was, in fact, selling them to individual. He had the dirty money. He also had a gun. He had
Also
dirty
wanted to
inkling.
shoot
Yeah, he had all the
Denzel
grounds for intent to distribute. But the question comes with regards to the accomplice to drug trafficking charge for Jay Harper.
Gets drug trafficking from an unlawful W.
It took me a minute to get to a conclusion on this because I want to go over the law with everybody here and see kind of give you some insight to my thought process here. Pertaining to drug trafficking, on the search warrant and through further examination,
Beyond reasonable doubt,
evidence,
chat.
no
was
additional
something that
methamphetamine
didn't
was
happen.
found on Jay Harper. No
Just
additional
remember that
methamphetamine
it's
was found in
beyond
his
reasonable doubt. Yeah.
property.
For
No
something that
paraphernalia.
didn't happen.
No indication that he was party to or privy to the manufacturing process was found. I don't even know, and I can't even prove beyond a reasonable doubt, that Mr. Harper would have been involved in the manufacturing process. It seems more likely to me that he's a street dealer, working under the guise of Mr. Wallace. So I can't find him guilty of drug trafficking on the second one, because I don't believe that he was an accomplice to the manufacturing process. However, he was in receipt of methamphetamine. And he is an individual, though, while he is not present in the courtroom, he is an individual that was the recipient of transferred controlled dangerous substances that is capable to be subpoenaed or summoned to court. While he's not here today, and we understand why, we're left with a question. Under that prong of drug trafficking, that being, again, that the suspect has sold, transferred, or distributed a controlled dangerous substance to an individual who may be summoned or subpoenaed to appear in court, the court has to ask itself whether that individual can be seen as an accomplice in a drug trafficking operation.
I'll be honest. He's not even here.
And the continuing action is what defines it for me here. Mr. Harper had taken those drugs and walked away and gone back to his apartment. I'd say the answer is no. He's the recipient. But that's not what he did. He remained on scene at the UK Oil, sold drugs to individuals, and was seen handing money back to Mr. Wallace. That, with those continuing actions, gets rid of any reasonable doubt that Mr. Harper was not party to the drug trafficking operation. He will therefore be found guilty as an accomplice. With regard to sentencing, for the criminal offenses, Mr. Wallace, you are to be sentenced to 5 years in prison in Bolingbrook
Wow.
with 5 years of parole
Wow.
and a $750,000 fine. Mr. Harper will be sentenced to 9 years in prison, 9 years parole, and $500,000 in fines. And the time being such simply because this is his third drug trafficking offense.
5 years, chat. That's 10 days off.
That is the ruling of
I've
this
done
court
in
with
court
regards to
3
the criminal.
times.
10 days off.
However, there was a petition put forth by the prosecution in sentencing for the seizure of a number of assets that belonged to Mr. Wallace. A pony, a Manchez, an S14 Kooky, a residence at Cougar Avenue 13, apartment number 16, and a number of materials that were seized.